heard and saw explosions?
Of course there were explosions. There's jet fuel, pockets of unburned jet fuel that are going to explode. There's every paint can in the janitor's closet is eventually going to get hot enough to explode. There's computers, there are monitors, all of those explode. There are hundreds of things in an office in any sort of structure that when it's burned will explode. And of course, when you destroy a building with explosives, it's not like you can go in there the night before, plant your explosives, and have people come in the next day and not see them. When you demolish a building, it takes years of preparation sometimes, especially for a building as big as the World Trade Center. You have to rip out all the interior walls. You have to strategically plant hundreds, thousands of charges, all connected by cordite. You can't use an electrical charge because there's way too much interference. Everything is done by these blast cables that are ignited, and this propagates through the building. It's kind of ludicrous to think that this could have been rigged and nobody would have noticed.
Så er der mystikken omkring bygning 7, som ikke blev ramt af noget fly, men alligevel faldt næsten lodret til jorden som et perfekt stykke nedrivningsarbejde med sprængstof.
You can see the blast points going off building 7. You can see boom, 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 and it falls. And they hit it right in front of us.
We have to realize that an office tower is 90% air. And when a building's collapsing, all that air has to go somewhere. And under those forces, you have air that's ejected outside. As a floor comes down, all that air moves out at extraordinarily high speed.
Men hvad så med ejeren Larry Silversteins udtalelse om, at bygningen var blevet sprængt i luften?
Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull.
Hvor pulle at trække skulle være slang i den amerikanske nedrivningsbranche for at rive bygninger ned med sprængstof.
First of all, pull it is not slang among any of the controlled demolition experts we were able to talk to. Nobody uses that term. Second of all, he was talking about the firefighters.
I think in December or January, he issued a statement explaining that what he had meant that day was to pull the firemen out of the building, which is what people have always said was what he meant. I mean, why Larry Silverstein would go on TV and admit to destroying his own building has always been puzzling.
And now when he has retracted it, it doesn't make
no, because of
any
course,
difference?
Right, because of course now he's retracting it because it's feeding the theory and the government has told him to retract it.
Men hvorfor styrtede bygning 7 så overhovedet sammen, når den ikke blev ramt af et fly?
Well, it was hit by the other two World Trade Center buildings when they fell. The NIST teams found that upwards of 25% of the south face of Building 7 was scooped out by debris when the first two towers fell. That was very tough to see. If you look at the camera footage and all the evidence of the conspiracy, they're all taken from the north. But they found evidence that 25% of the building had been scooped out, and that there had been a fire raging all day long that also produces heat and softens structure. The combination of that caused the building to collapse.
Når faldet blev lodret og symmetrisk, skyldes det, at brand og murbrokker fra tvillingetårnene ødelagde næsten alle bærende dele på flere af etagerne. De sidste bærende dele blev overbelastet af vægten fra den overliggende del af bygningen, så bygningen til sidst sank sammen i hele sin bredde. De øverste etager knuste de nederste i et lodret accelererende fald, og det endte med en bunke murbrokker, der hvor bygning 7 havde stået.
If you were going to go into the court of law, and you were the prosecutor, you were like representing the people, and the defendant was sitting over there was George Bush, and you're saying we charge you with having knowledge of wiring the World Trade Center with these bombs and pushing a button and blowing them up. I mean, what evidence would you present to prove this based on that critique? So, it's a rhetorical question. They don't have very much evidence.
Lad os til sidst se på påstanden om, at det magtfulde amerikanske luftvåben fik flyveforbud, så flykabrerne uhindret kunne ramme World Trade Center.
theory assumes that there are fighter planes on alert around the country in NORAD bases. That, as the case is, that wasn't how it was on the morning of 9/11. NORAD, which is the North American Air Defense Command, is postured, or was postured, to intercept Soviet bombers coming over the North Pole. On the morning of 9/11, this is a decade after the Soviet Union had fallen, NORAD was struggling for existence. They had, their job had kind of disappeared because there were no bombers coming, and they were only postured to intercept things outside of the U.S. There were no bases in the middle of the U.S. They were wrapped around. There were only 14 planes on alert every day. They eventually launched fighter planes from Massachusetts. They were vectored into a holding pattern because they had to keep these fighter planes outside of the regular commercial traffic that's going over the U.S. I mean, there's so many airplanes out there. They had to vector these out over the ocean. And they sat around there for a while waiting to figure out where to go.
Først kunne man nemlig ikke finde flykaperne, for de havde slået transponderne, det vil sige radiosignalet til kontroltårnet fra.
When the hijackers took over the planes, one of the first things they did was turn off the transponders, which made it much harder to find the airplanes. Meanwhile, air traffic control is looking for these missing planes. They can't find them because there's no transponder, and it took some time. And then eventually the planes hit the tower.
Hvad så med konspirationsfolkenes ofte gentaget påstand om, at det amerikanske luftvåben normalt og i løbet af få minutter opsnapper et hvert fly, der kommer ud af kurs?
In the prior calendar year, 67 times it was recorded that whenever a plane was off course, within minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, fighter jets were dispatched to intercept the plane.
One of the conspiracy theories is that airplanes that flew off course were routinely intercepted by fighter jets. And it goes to a quote that was in an AP story that said that from a period of time, the year before 9/11, planes had been intercepted 67 times. What the actual report says was that there had been, I believe it was 67 scrambles, not interceptions. And a scramble is very different from an interception. Scramble means that the planes took off, that fighter planes took off. It's not tied to a plane off course. When we talked to NORAD, their records indicated that 99% of those scrambles have been for practice.
Faktisk har amerikanske jagerfly kun opsnappet 2 civile fly over USA inden for de sidste 20 år. Sidste gang var i 1999, da Golfstjernen Payne Edwards fly kom ud af kurs og senere crashede. Dengang var militæret næsten 1,5 time om at lokalisere flyet. Og der var endda ingen flykapere, som havde slukket for transponderen. Så case closed, sagen afsluttet? Nej, selvfølgelig ikke. For Popular Mechanics, det medie i USA, der er gået dybest ind i kritikken af konspirationsteorierne, er selvfølgelig selv en del af konspirationen.
The head writer is a first cousin of the Homeland Security Chief, Michael Chertoff. And Mr. Chertoff was the head of the story with the, I guess, 8 writers they had.
Sometime, I think it was the second week of January, Bush announced that Michael Chertoff was going to be nominated as the Homeland Security Director. Our story came out on the stands in March, and by that time, Chertoff was sworn in, and it suddenly, because we had the same last name, it became a conspiracy that I was his cousin, and that Homeland Security had directed us to write this story, which is patently ludicrous.
We talked to Mr. Chertoff, the first cousin of the Homeland Security Chief. And I said, by the way, are you related to the Homeland Security Chief? He said, no. Well, later, the newspapers, after the story came out, called his mother, and she said, of course, he comes over for dinner. So they were also hiding that.
As the case is, I'm not related. I've never met Michael Chertoff.
Teorierne om 11. september er for længst blevet vor tids store konspirationsteori. Og hvis det går som med teorierne om Kennedy-mordet, og det gør det utvivlsomt, vil vi også komme til at læse og høre om den i de næste 50 år.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th. Malicious lies that attempt to shift the blame away from the terrorists themselves, away from the guilty.
Do you agree with Charlie Sheen that the U.S. government covered up the real events of the 9/11 attacks? 82% say yes. We're the conspiracy theorists, huh? Well, I guess those of you that buy the government conspiracy theory, you're getting to be a smaller and smaller minority, aren't you?